What would you do if the man you loved for 15 years hired you to care for his children without recognizing you as the girl who saved his life when you were both teenagers? Emma Park applied for a nanny position at the Sterling household, desperate for work after years of struggling to make ends meet and supporting her sick grandmother on minimum wage jobs. She was hired by Daniel Sterling, a widowed CEO, raising 3 young children alone after his wife died in childbirth 2 years earlier. Daniel was cold and distant during the interview, barely looking at Emma, as he explained his strict rules and high expectations for whoever would care for his most precious treasures. He had no idea that the plain woman in modest clothes sitting across from him was actually Emma Chen, the girl he had fallen in love with 15 years ago during one summer when his family had vacationed in her small coastal town. Emma had been 17 and Daniel had been 19, and they had spent 3 perfect months together before his family abruptly left, and Emma never heard from him again, despite his promises to write and return. She had spent years wondering what happened to the boy, who had been her first love and first kiss, and first person who made her believe she deserved more than the poverty she had been born into. Now he sat across from her with grief etched into his handsome face, and he looked right through her without a flicker of recognition, because Emma Chen had become Emma Park, and 15 years had changed her in ways that apparently made her invisible to someone who once said he would never forget her. This is the story of a woman who took a job raising the children of her first love, while he remained completely unaware that his nanny was the girl whose heart he had broken all those years ago. Emma moved into the Sterling mansion with her small suitcase of belongings and tried not to think about the irony of living in luxury as hired help, rather than as the girlfriend Daniel had once promised to bring home to meet his family properly. The Sterling home was massive and cold despite its expensive furnishings, and Emma quickly understood that Daniel had thrown himself into work as a way to avoid processing his grief over his wife's death. He left early for the office and came home late and interacted with his children with a careful distance that suggested he was afraid of feeling too much or getting too attached in case loss struck again. His 3 children were Caroline, who was 6, and twins Michael and Sophie, who were 4, and they were simultaneously adorable and clearly struggling with the absence of emotional warmth in their home. They had been through 4 nannies in 2 years because Daniel's standards were impossibly high, and his grief made him critical of anyone trying to fill the maternal role his wife had left empty. Emma understood immediately that her job was not just caring for the children, but also trying to bring some warmth and stability to a household that was drowning in unprocessed sadness. The children tested Emma during her first week the way children do when they have learned that adults leave and attachment leads to abandonment. Caroline was defiant and refused to follow any instructions, while the twins cried constantly and clung to each other for comfort no one else seemed able to provide. Emma did not try to force compliance or demand obedience, but instead focused on creating safety and routine and small moments of joy that had been missing from their structured but emotionally empty lives. She made breakfast into an adventure and turned bedtime into story time, and found ways to let them be children rather than miniature adults, performing grief appropriately. Slowly the children began to trust her, and their personalities emerged from underneath the sadness that had been smothering them. Caroline revealed herself to be curious and creative and desperate for someone to actually listen to her thoughts. The twins were playful and affectionate once they felt secure enough to express emotions beyond fear and sadness. Emma fell in love with these children, who carried pieces of Daniel in their faces and mannerisms, and she poured into them all the love she had once wanted to give their father. Daniel noticed the changes in his children during the rare moments he was home and present enough to observe them. They smiled more and fought less, and seemed lighter in ways he had not seen since before their mother died. He asked Emma what she was doing differently than the previous nannies, and Emma said simply that she loved his children and treated them like whole people rather than problems to be managed. Daniel looked at her with something like surprise, as if the concept of loving his children was novel rather than the most obvious response to 3 beautiful souls who desperately needed affection. Emma wanted to ask him if he remembered what it felt like to love freely without fear of loss. But she held her tongue because that was not a conversation a nanny had with her employer, no matter what their history. She watched Daniel struggle with his grief and his fear and his inability to let himself be vulnerable with his own children. And she wanted to shake him and remind him that life was short and love was precious, and he was wasting time building walls when he should be building connections. But that was not her place, so instead she focused on giving his children what he could not, which was the emotional presence and unconditional affection they needed to heal. 6 months into her employment, Emma was reading bedtime stories to Caroline when the little girl asked if Emma would ever leave like all the other nannies. Emma promised that she would stay as long as Caroline needed her, and Caroline said she needed her forever, because Emma was the only grown-up who made her feel safe besides her daddy. But daddy was always sad and busy. Emma's heart broke for this child who was articulating something Daniel probably did not even realize, which was that his grief was creating distance that his children could feel and internalize as their own inadequacy. That night, after the children were asleep, Emma did something she had never done before, which was knocking on Daniel's study door to talk about something other than schedules and logistics. Daniel looked surprised but invited her in, and Emma carefully explained that Caroline had expressed fears about Emma leaving and concerns about Daniel's emotional availability. She suggested gently that the children might benefit from family therapy, or at least from Daniel spending more quality time with them, engaging emotionally rather than just providing materially. Daniel's expression hardened, and he said coldly that he was doing the best he could, and if Emma felt his parenting was inadequate, perhaps she was not the right fit for this position after all. Emma refused to be dismissed or intimidated because she cared too much about these children to stay silent when they were hurting. She told Daniel directly that she was not questioning his love for his children, but pointing out that they could not feel that love through his walls and his absence and his fear of attachment. She said that losing their mother was traumatic, but losing their father to grief while he was still physically present was a different kind of trauma that would shape them in lasting ways. Daniel stood up, and his voice shook as he told Emma she had no idea what it was like to lose someone you built your entire life around, and to be terrified every day that something would happen to your children too. Emma looked at him and said quietly that actually she did know, because she had lost someone she loved very much who had promised to come back, but never did, and she had spent 15 years wondering if he was dead or just did not care enough to keep his promises. Something flickered in Daniel's expression, like a distant memory trying to surface, but it did not break through, and instead, he dismissed Emma and told her to focus on her job and leave the parenting decisions to him. But Emma's words must have affected Daniel more than he showed, because over the following weeks, he started coming home earlier and spending time with his children in ways that went beyond checking homework and approving schedules. He joined them for dinner and asked about their days, and listened to their answers with genuine attention rather than distracted politeness. He tucked them into bed and told them stories about their mother in ways that kept her memory alive without making grief the defining feature of their family. Emma watched this transformation and felt simultaneously happy for the children and sad for herself, because seeing Daniel be present and loving with his kids reminded her of the boy she had fallen in love with, who had been warm and attentive and emotionally open before something had clearly hardened him. She wondered what had happened between that summer 15 years ago and now that had turned Daniel from someone who loved freely into someone who feared emotional connection so deeply he had been willing to emotionally abandon his own children rather than risk the pain of potential loss. 9 months into her employment, the Sterling household had transformed from a cold, grief-filled mansion into something that felt almost like a home. The children were thriving, with Caroline excelling in school and the twins becoming more confident and expressive every day. Daniel was more present and engaged, though still careful with his emotions in ways that suggested he was testing the waters of connection without fully committing to vulnerability. Emma had settled into a routine that felt both comfortable and painful, because she was living adjacent to the life she once thought she would have with Daniel, while remaining completely invisible to him as anyone other than the excellent nanny who loved his children. She had thought that maybe proximity would trigger his memory, or that something she said or did would remind him of that summer, but apparently 15 years and life experience had erased her so completely from his mind that she might as well have been a stranger. Emma told herself this was fine, and that she had taken this job for the children, not for any fantasy of rekindling a teenage romance. But late at night, she sometimes cried for the girl she used to be, who had believed that first love meant something eternal. The moment everything changed started innocently enough with Caroline's school having a father-daughter dance that Daniel initially said he could not attend because of a business meeting. Caroline was devastated, and Emma watched her try to hide her disappointment with the same emotional suppression she had learned from watching her father. Emma made a decision that was probably overstepping her boundaries, but felt necessary, which was calling Daniel at his office and telling him directly that missing this dance would damage his relationship with Caroline in ways that no business deal could repair. She said that Caroline needed to know she was more important than work, and that showing up for her now would create a foundation of trust that would matter when she was older and life got more complicated. Daniel was quiet for a long moment and then said he would rearrange his schedule and thanked Emma for caring enough about his daughter to call him out on his priorities. That night, Emma helped Caroline get ready for the dance and watched Daniel pick up his daughter looking uncomfortable in formal wear, but determined to be present for her. When they returned hours later, Caroline was glowing with happiness, and Daniel looked lighter than Emma had seen him since she started working there. Caroline ran to Emma and said the dance was perfect, and that her daddy danced with her to every song, and all her friends said he was the best dad there. After Caroline went to bed, Daniel found Emma in the kitchen and thanked her again for pushing him to attend the dance. He said he had forgotten what it felt like to create happy memories rather than just managing daily responsibilities, and that Emma had given him and his children something precious that he had not even realized they were missing. Emma said that his children just needed him to be present, and that grief did not have to mean emotional shutdown. It could also mean honoring the person he lost by living fully and loving openly. Daniel asked her where she had learned to be so wise about loss, and Emma said quietly that she had lost someone important when she was young and had spent years trying to understand whether it was better to build walls or to stay open despite the risk of pain. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her for the first time with genuine curiosity rather than employer assessment, and asked her about her past. Emma felt her heart race because this was the closest they had come to the truth, but she was not ready to reveal herself. So instead, she gave him carefully edited facts about growing up in a coastal town and meeting someone one summer who had changed her life before disappearing without explanation. Daniel's expression shifted through several emotions as Emma told her story, and when she finished, he was quiet for a long moment before asking which coastal town and what year. Emma told him, and watched recognition finally dawn across his face as pieces clicked into place, and he realized that his nanny was Emma Chen, the girl he had spent one perfect summer with 15 years ago. He said her name as a question, and Emma nodded, and Daniel looked absolutely devastated as he understood that she had been in his house for 9 months, caring for his children while he looked right through her. He asked why she had not told him, and Emma said honestly that she needed the job and was not sure he would hire her if he knew their history. And also she had not been certain he would even remember her. Daniel said he had never forgotten her, and that she had been his first love, and losing contact with her had been one of the biggest regrets of his life. He explained that his father had discovered their relationship that summer and had disapproved because Emma was not from their social class and had forced Daniel to leave immediately and cut off all contact. Daniel had been 19 and still under his father's control, and had convinced himself that Emma would be better off without him anyway because their worlds were too different. Emma listened to this explanation and felt 15 years of pain and confusion finally make sense, but the understanding did not erase the hurt. She told Daniel that she had waited for him and had believed his promises and had spent years thinking she had not been enough to make him keep his word. She said his silence had taught her that love was conditional and that people like her did not get to keep people like him, no matter what they felt for each other. Daniel looked destroyed and said he had been a coward and had let his father's classism determine his choices, and by the time he was old enough to push back, he had convinced himself it was too late, and Emma had probably moved on and forgotten about him. Emma laughed bitterly and said that she had taken a job as his nanny and spent 9 months raising his children, which did not exactly suggest she had forgotten about him. Daniel reached for her hand, and asked if she could forgive him and if they could possibly start over now that the truth was out. Emma pulled her hand back and said that she was not the 17-year-old girl who believed in fairy tale endings anymore, and that she was his employee caring for his children, and they could not complicate that relationship with unresolved feelings from the past. The weeks following the revelation were complicated and tense, with Daniel suddenly hyper-aware of Emma in ways that made her uncomfortable and self-conscious. He watched her with his children and seemed to be cataloguing all the ways she had filled the gaps in their lives while he was drowning in grief and work. He tried to talk to her about their past and their feelings, but Emma shut down those conversations because she could not afford to blur the professional boundaries that kept her employed and his children stable. But the children noticed something had shifted, and Caroline asked Emma directly if she liked her daddy, because he looked at Emma the way princes looked at princesses in stories. Emma told Caroline that she cared about her daddy very much, but that grown-up relationships were complicated, and sometimes caring about someone was not enough to make things work. Caroline said that seemed stupid, and if two people loved each other, they should just be together, and Emma wished life was as simple as a 6-year-old believed it could be. Daniel overheard this conversation, and later told Emma that Caroline was right, and that life was too short, and they had already wasted 15 years, and he did not want to waste more time pretending he did not still love her. Emma wanted to believe that a second chance was possible, but her practical side that had been hardened by years of poverty and disappointment reminded her that Daniel was her employer, and she was his nanny, and power imbalances made genuine consent complicated. She told Daniel that if he wanted to pursue a relationship, they would need to do it properly, with her leaving her nanny position first, and them dating like normal people without the complication of her being economically dependent on him. Daniel said he understood and did not want her to feel pressured, but also did not want her to leave because his children loved her, and he was terrified of disrupting their stability again. Emma said that was exactly why they needed to be careful and figure out their feelings without his children, his well-being hanging in the balance. Daniel agreed, and they decided that Emma would stay as nanny while they both thought about what they actually wanted and whether trying again after 15 years was brave or foolish. But proximity and unresolved feelings were powerful forces, and both of them struggled to maintain professional distance when every interaction was charged with history and longing, and the memory of who they used to be together. The situation reached a breaking point 3 months after the revelation, when Daniel's mother visited and immediately recognized Emma from that summer 15 years ago. She made a scene accusing Emma of manipulating Daniel and using his children to work her way back into his life for money and status. She demanded Emma be fired immediately and threatened to take Daniel to court for custody of the children if he did not remove this gold digger from their home. Emma was humiliated and hurt, but before she could defend herself, Daniel told his mother in a voice colder than Emma had ever heard him use that Emma was the best thing that had happened to his family since his wife died, and if his mother could not treat her with respect, she could leave. He said that Emma had been caring for his children for a year, without any expectation of anything beyond fair payment, and that her love for them was genuine, and his mother's classist assumptions were both offensive and inaccurate. He told his mother that he had been the one who failed Emma 15 years ago by listening to his father's bigotry instead of fighting for someone he loved, and he was not going to make that mistake again. His mother left in a fury, and Emma stood there shocked because Daniel had just chosen her over his family in a way he had failed to do when they were teenagers. After his mother left, Daniel pulled Emma into his study and told her that he was done pretending his feelings were not real or that they could maintain professional distance while living in the same house. He said he loved her and had loved her since that summer, and seeing her with his children had only made those feelings stronger because she was everything he needed and everything his family needed. He said he did not care about class differences or what people thought, and he wanted to build a life with her if she was willing to risk trusting him again. Emma felt tears she had been holding back for months finally break free, and she told Daniel that she had never stopped loving him, but she was terrified that history would repeat itself and he would choose family expectations or fear over their relationship again. Daniel kissed her softly and promised that he was not 19 anymore, and he had learned that life was too short to live by other people's rules, especially when those rules cost you the people who actually mattered. He said his wife's death had taught him that tomorrow was not guaranteed, and that grief came from wasted opportunities, as much as from actual loss. Emma kissed him back and felt 15 years of pain and longing start to transform into something that looked like hope and healing. The transition from nanny to partner was complicated by the need to help the children understand the change, and Emma's concerns about whether she was truly choosing this relationship or simply accepting what felt inevitable. Daniel suggested they date properly, while Emma transitioned out of the nanny role, and they hired someone else to care for the children, so there was no power imbalance or economic pressure on her decision. Emma appreciated his thoughtfulness and agreed that clean boundaries would help her trust that her feelings were authentic, rather than influenced by circumstance. They hired a new nanny, and Emma moved out of the Sterling mansion and got her own apartment, and she and Daniel dated like normal adults, taking time to actually know each other as the people they had become rather than the teenagers they once were. They discovered that while some things had changed, much of what had drawn them together 15 years ago remained, including their values and humor and the way they felt safe being vulnerable with each other in ways they struggled to be with anyone else. Daniel's children took the transition better than Emma had feared, with Caroline declaring that she had known Emma and her daddy liked each other and was glad they finally figured it out. The twins were young enough that the change felt natural as long as Emma remained in their lives. Emma maintained her relationship with the children while also allowing the new nanny to establish her own bond with them. 1 year after the truth had been revealed, Daniel proposed to Emma in the same coastal town where they had met as teenagers, and this time there was no family interference or social pressure to keep them apart. Emma said yes through happy tears, and they married in a small ceremony with his children standing beside them and Emma's grandmother, who had finally beaten cancer, present to see her granddaughter marry the boy she had never forgotten. Daniel's mother eventually came around when she saw how happy her son was and how good Emma was for him and his children, though her approval came too late to really matter to either of them. Emma became stepmother to the children she had cared for as a nanny, and the transition felt natural because they already loved each other and had built trust over the months she had been part of their daily lives. She and Daniel had 2 more children together and created a blended family that honored the memory of the children's biological mother, while also making space for new love and new growth. They often talked about the strange path that had brought them back together, and agreed that while they would not have chosen the pain of 15 years apart, both of them had needed that time to become people who could actually build a lasting partnership. Daniel had needed to learn about loss and grief and the importance of emotional presence. Emma had needed to learn her own worth and that love should not require her to make herself smaller or more convenient. Together they created something neither could have built at 19, which was a relationship based on genuine understanding and hard-won wisdom, and the knowledge that second chances were precious and should never be taken for granted.